All right. I believe this means we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, tech fans of all shapes and sorts and sizes and persuasions, welcome to another episode of the Monday Morning Tech Chat Show on the SGGQA podcast channel. I'm Juan Carlos Bagnell, aka Some Gadget Guy, the SGG of this terribly named podcast series. But of course, the QA of this title is the important part. Question and answer. We like to make this an interactive conversation. We get to hang out, start our tech week off right. It's why I like to host my show on a Monday. And there's been so much news. I feel like from Tuesday to Thursday of last week, it was like the perfect storm of huge tech stories that we were trying to follow up on. Last week we talked about OnlyFans. We're going to be talking about OnlyFans again this week. There's news from Apple. There's some government news and policy news as it pertains to cybersecurity with all these hacks going down. Some teases and some rumors to Pixel 6. And I still want to try and find some time at the end of this podcast to chat out sort of my first impressions on using some holding phones from Samsung, courtesy of my buddy TK Bay. So we've got a ton. We've got a ton to jump in to talk about, to jump in on. I don't know that's the phrase. We've got a ton to jump in on. That's clumsy podcasting right there. But I want to say hey to all the fine folks in the chat right now. I see Dave Burns, McCorcoran3, Simon says Hypno Gormlord, one hell of a boy, Mark Copian, ER1980, Zhao Botnik, Ozaran319. Barry Johnson was hanging out in the chat, but he's got a meeting to get to. Unfortunately, he's gonna miss like the first hour of the show. But the gadget block, I'm hoping he'll be back for the gadget block. Blank Clucks, it is very first time. Hold on, let me see if I can pull this up. This is the very first comment from Blank Clucks, and he's saying, "Sup, sup." Right back at you. We got Gary the Fireman, Aditya Anil, JMX Warrior, Q3 Becker. We got Steve Raymondit. We're gonna have a good show. And like I said, this is gonna be one of them crazy newsy kinds of shows. JDMP10, have fold and flip phones been arriving yet? Yeah. So the first batch of pre-orders went out last week. My buddy TK, I did not jump on the pre-order train. We'll be talking about that more in the gadget blog, but I got to go hands-on because TK kind of took a bullet for the team. TK is here. Good morning, everyone. Sabaho. Thurkari saying, hey, first time catching the show live, but been listening to the podcast for a few months now. Love your perspective on things. Well, I love your perspective on joining podcasts. This is absolutely the soul replenishing way that I like to start my week off. And getting to hang out and nerd out with some good techie pals. Got Awesome Opossum, Andy. Why don't we jump in and cover some jump in on great podcasting. Oh, call me Carl. Sorry, I'm looking. So Carl, hold on. There we go. So Carl, apologies. The way that the font reads when I have my little teeny window. Let me make this a bit bigger. I know I have issues going back and forth. I swear the L looked like a lowercase I on this font. So I thought it was Kari. I was like, oh, hey, Kari is watching. Hey, Carl, thank you for joining. And Simon says, Hypno, can we jump in on the jumping in? I would expect nothing less. So I hope everyone had a lovely weekend. Mine was spent working like crazy. I'm trying to wrap my brain around some new graphics and plugins and titles and stuff for another video project that I'm working on. And I spent way too much time yesterday. Instead of trying to take some time off, way too much time just bashing my head against the keyboard because I hate After Effects so much. But there's nothing else that I can really use. So let me take a sip of coffee here. I saw one estimate on housekeeping. Where are we at? Someone gave me like, oh man, Aditya Anil saying 26 minutes for housekeeping. Mr. Malignance is saying 23 minutes. I thought Gary the Fireman gave me see, I feel like this might be reasonable. housekeeping in 18 minutes or less, or your pizza is free. Last week was busy. I did not get a lot of like review videos out last week, and still felt like, man, I am running this engine hard, making all this content. So let's knock out housekeeping here. Dave Burns is saying 14 years, 14 years worth of housekeeping, which if you kind of sum up my media creating career, it is kind of 14 years of housekeeping. That would be the title of my awful autobiographical, biopic. All right, let's jump into screen share here. First up, this is one I've kind of felt. I've tried to start this sentence 4 times now, and my brain locked it up every single time. So I'm going to try this one more time. Last week was a major week for some of the most expensive phones on the market today. I kind of wanted to spend just a minute going back and looking at a phone that's kind of at the polar opposite end of the retail spectrum. So the folks at New sent out an X6 Plus. And this is it retails for $130 on Amazon. It's not really unlocked, but it's kind of called unlocked. It's tricky. So this is an entry level handset as we go through North America. And what's funny is after putting out this video, I still got comments from people like, yeah, oh, you don't know entry level until you're forced to use a $30 phone like I do, or a $50 phone like I have to. Our perception of value is a little warped in the tech community when we're mostly listening to Western tech reviewers reviewing $2,000 folding phones. So I kind of wanted to put that out there as a conversation. It's not really a review. I don't feel, the person who's shopping a $130 phone is going to benefit from the same kind of performance testing and granular camera comparisons. I feel like that's a different conversation, and it's a conversation that I'm struggling to keep up with. I keep saying I want to spend more time with these entry-level phones, and it's difficult. A video like this is not going to track well on YouTube. It's not gonna hit my audience. YouTube isn't gonna feed it through the algorithm. My subscribers aren't really gonna see it. So it's tough. It's really hard. But this is kind of where I'm excited to see better tech trickle down. So this is a bit more of a philosophical piece. Like, what is it that we're really looking for, and who are we trying to protect when we form a review of an expensive phone around the idea of average consumer use? I feel like we're off the pulse. I feel like we're missing our targets there. Case in point, one of the most successful articles I've ever written. So this isn't a video review. This is a written editorial. I guess it's a written comparison. Google Pixel 5a versus iPhone SE, what real competition looks like. And I'm not clickbaiting this. I really do feel like there is a strong argument to be made for comparing a Pixel 5a against an iPhone SE, as they're both the same retail price, and they come from the two manufacturers that actually make the operating system. So it's the complete vertical of hardware, software, and operating system, all from the company that makes all of those things. So this was a fun article to write up, and just spoiler alert, the iPhone does not win any categories because it's an iPhone SE. Moving right along, one of the major reviews that I did get out, NextDock 360, your next laptop could be your phone. I am stinking excited. I've got the NextDock 360. I've been using it a ton. I forgot to bring it back upstairs. It is currently downstairs because when I'm downstairs at our little dining room area, I plug in a phone and I've got a laptop environment to work from. It is so handy. It is awesome. I really like this laptop dock. And it just further reinforces how sad I am that we're not getting first-party versions of this idea anymore. The last time we saw a major manufacturer step up to this was HP. And that was on a Windows phone. That's how far back we've gone. And I feel like if we really wanted to do justice to premium price tags on phones, if Samsung, Motorola, even TCL, if they were to put out their own hardware to support features like DeX, I think we'd see way more a way more aggressive cycle of improving that as an operating system environment. It's just kind of sad. The more I use something as good as a next dock, the more I think like there's a market missing here. there's a chunk of consumers that are not gonna be able to get their hands on these, that are inaccessible to these consumers, that would really appreciate not having multiple devices. I keep toying around with this. So, you know, in the comments, and tell me if you think this would be a fun video, or if you know me, if it would just be too cranky or too snarky. I kind of want to enlist the help of a YouTuber, another reviewer, who doesn't think that, you know, phone desktop style computing is really the thing, right? We kind of keep seeing techies riding off this idea, because if you have to carry a laptop shell anyway, why wouldn't you just buy a laptop? And I kind of want to stage it like, let's say you've got $1,000, right? And you're telling me that editing video on a $1,000 phone is kind of a no-go. Like, oh, it's just too complicated and the screen's too hard to use. And I want to say, like, $1,000 phone to $1,000 laptop, that's all you get. And you've got to make sort of a video or a vlog. I'd love to see what comes out of a $1,000 laptop. And I'd love to see that kind of performance comparison too, right? You know, like, I genuinely believe a $1,000 phone will finish off that 4K video at YouTube quality faster than a $1,000 laptop might. So I'm kind of playing with this idea, and I think it could be fun, you know? Like, so here I've got this $1,000 phone. Are you going to take phone calls on your $1,000 laptop? Because you don't get to carry anything else. It's $1,000 to $1,000. Are you going to shoot off of the little webcam on your laptop? Because it's $1,000 to $1,000. I'm trying to find what the hook of that is. So yeah, I'm just increasingly less impressed with techies that kind of shrug when we see incredible capability, portable, functional. It's not excessively expensive, and it fills all of these other gaps. Like, the Nextdock 360 is an amazing portable monitor. It's a great laptop shell. It's a great companion device. You can power mini computers off of it. I plugged in my Super Nintendo Mini. I'm just regurgitating the review here because I flippin' love this thing. LFA reviews, I'm all for the snark. Well, thank you, Jeff. Again, the thing is, I still want it to be entertaining and instructive. So I'm struggling with the concept just a little bit. But if that's something you guys think someone would rise to the challenge, let me know. Because I think if I format it that way and just say, hey, you get one gadget, and you tell me that a phone can't do it, so use your laptop, they're all gonna balk. Well, I mean, but, you know, everyone knows that laptop web cameras are just for, like, conferencing and stuff. So, I mean, really, it's not fair. Another quick little video that I put out, and I'm thinking I'm gonna do, like, a little follow-up. I'm still debating whether or not I'm gonna spend any significant time on shorts. I just don't get... I'm personally too long-winded. So I'm not sure I really have the brain. You know what I mean? There's like a special kind of creativity for making short form content, and I am a rambler. So I'm a Nash rambler. I don't grok short, concise. You ask me for the time, I'm gonna tell you how to build a watch. But anyway, I put out a short question. And again, it's sort of a debate piece. Smartphones haven't gotten boring. Maybe you got boring. And I'm going through some of the comments on this, and I think I'm going to put up just like a little reply, just what some of the kind of most, what some of the reactions to this video were. And you just kind of read through the comments, have a little fun, and talk about some of this idea that because we haven't seen like a significant change in form factor, somehow this is boring, and what we need now is the novelty of hinges and things. And I feel like we've missed the point on what computers are. And what is a computer? And it's really, these devices are as exciting as the things you do on them. That is my argument, and always has been my argument. And so other form factors can help, bring new functionality to the table, but there have been a number of other things too, like increased performance. Well, what is it that we're using that for? Because if you're telling me that the only thing that you can use increased performance for is opening a social media app a microsecond faster, I'm gonna think you're not very good at tech. I'm reading through some of the Fold 3 reviews, and they're still using the Fold 3 like they would any other phone. Oh wow, I can split screen and watch a video while I stay in my Slack. Anything else? Can you do anything else? Does this empower you to do anything? Or is it just, it's the same phone, I mean, just a larger screen? I mean, okay, I'm gonna save that for the gadget block because we got to talk about Fold 3, stuff like that. My primary experience using the Z Fold 3 and the Z Flip 3 came from the best of our week. We didn't stream last Thursday, we streamed last Friday, so we could tackle a morning show, and we did a live broadcast from beautiful Lake Balboa in Southern California. We started early, and then it got real hot. And, oh man, yeah, that was a bit much. But really, what was impressive was the amount of nature. Yes, absolutely, the bird stream, Gary the fireman. I'm telling you, man, these things were like little dinosaurs just rolling all over the gazebo that we had kind of staked out. But TK and I had a great conversation, kind of detailed our audio challenge. We're going to do an audio challenge this year instead of our normal smartphone trade challenge. I hooked him up with his very first listening experience on planar magnetic headphones. We traded DACs, so I'm going to be breaking in the helm bolt, and then he's going to be playing with my THX Onyx. So we're going to detail a little bit more of that this Thursday and share our playlist. We're going to put together one big music listening playlist that we're going to kind of trade musical genres back and forth. El Jefe Reviews saying, audio challenge? And Jeff, I mean, if you're around Thursday night, I feel like if you wanted to jump in on a show that's going to be pretty heavy audio, maybe you could jump in on, I mean, any other perspective on like DACs and amps and earbuds and headphones. I don't know if you're down. I mean, no pressure. You don't have to commit to anything in this live stream right now. I'm just saying. I'm just putting it out there. And see, in Tech Love and Mama, see, this is what I'm talking about. I'm assuming you're referencing the Fold. Yeah, you are referencing the Fold 3. Definitely not the same phone. It's a different experience. I can't compare it to other typical smartphones. I'm still learning my first Fold, but I'm loving it. It's the same frustration I had when I was talking about V60 dual display and V50 dual display and G8X dual display and Velvet dual display. Same frustration I had talking about the Surface Duo. I still do think dual display is better all around than single folding plastic screen. And like I said, we're going to talk about Z Fold, Gadget Block. We're going to get there. But we're talking about a radically different kind of use. And I'm frustrated by techies that are thirsty for some kind of novelty, kind of writing off the differences. Well, it's so bulky, it's so big. You have to like open it and close it. And you're like, yeah, that's kind of the point though. So instead of only stacking the criticisms, why aren't we talking about what those cons improve? And we don't. And I think techies, reviewers have done a terrible job. I mean, even for Samsung, and I'm not the biggest fan of Samsung, and I'm not the biggest fan of the Fold 3. I still find this frustrating that we're having this much difficulty really trying to grok. I'm like, how could this be something different? I opened the same app on it that I use on my regular phone, and it wasn't different or better. Why isn't Samsung finding magical ways to satisfy my craving for novelty while still giving me something completely familiar? And I'm kind of over that. I feel like we're killing our own market here. Someone who is not falling for that trap, someone who has always been riding the do more with your phone train, one Mr. Steve Litchfield and one Mr. Ted, I mean, kind of Ted Salmon? Salmon? I'm so embarrassed. I've only just called him ever Ted. That was a terrible segue. I joined the phone show's chat this last episode. It went live my Sunday AM. I love hanging out with Steve and Ted. They love to lean into me as an audio guy. Steve and I have been long time advocates for products like the Nextdocs. And again, almost writing exactly the same time frame. I saw the project, saw the second generation, both jumped on that aggressively. Nextdoc Touch, Nextdoc 360. There's an old school geek mentality where if you have a computing device, you want to see what limit you can push it to. And that's the kind of conversation I was brought up with. Overclocking PDAs. I still hold the record for overclocking the HP Compaq iPAC 2750. And that X scale, the trick to overclocking that X scale, it wasn't CPU timing. It was actually memory timing. If you could bump up the memory timing on the HX 2750, you could significantly improve performance. So I'm sorry. I don't know where that came from. That's the kind of nuts and bolts that I want to get into. I'm way less impressed with like pretty B-roll of something that feels nice in the hand. And Steve is exactly the kind of conversation I love to get into. We had an entire middle section talking about the dynamic vibration mode on Sony Xperia phones. How many reviews have you seen of Xperias that either one, completely gloss over it, like with kind of a shrug, like who would care about tactile experiences on our phones, or two, just never mention those kinds of features at all? Sony Xperias do this one thing. It's a little gimmicky, but it's unique to the Sony in a way that can kind of contribute to the media experience on your phone. And it was beautiful because like, I kind of put out one assertion, Ted came back saying, oh, well, that hasn't been my experience at all. And then when we sort of compared notes, we realized like, oh, we were talking about the right effect here. And Steve was talking about something a little bit different. And oh man, yeah, okay, now we all kind of get what this is doing and why we like this. Those kinds of conversations, awesome. And the fact that I kind of called what each person was doing and how they were using it just made me feel like, okay, I know WTF I'm talking about. So, yeah, it's good times. So please give them a listen. You should be subscribed to their show anyway. I love the phone show chat. A very chill vibe, very chill podcast, old school style podcast, and it's really good times. So, sorry, I just saw like a bunch of comments here. Let me kind of scroll back up real quick. And man, yeah, we got a lot. El Jefe reviews we do Thursday evenings, so I'll hit you up on Twitter and we'll work out, see if we can nail down a time. And again, I'm kind of being cheeky here. If you can't, no pressure, no issues if you can't join us here. Simon says, Hypno, going by the pre-orders, the folds are doing very well. So here's what's tricky is we don't know. I don't know what very well is. They seem to be doing better than last year's folds, which were sold kind of in the midst of a global pandemic. Samsung estimated they were going to sell around 4 million folding phones of that generation, and they ended up selling closer to like 2.5. So this year, they're estimating they're going to sell around 6. And with the Flip 3, that actually might be more attainable. But it's really difficult tracking down. We know Galaxy S21 sales are dropping, are plunging. Like just no excitement around the S21. When we talk about someone who's supposed to be the global leader in selling smartphones, obviously any other manufacturer would love to have the S21 sales numbers, but Samsung internally, they're dropping significantly. I can't find any good info on how many Notes were sold last year. So making up the difference in how many fewer S21s were sold over S20s, plus cutting out, there will be no Note sales this year because there is no Note. It's really difficult to get a vibe for, are folding phones making up the difference from all the people who are not buying S21s and who will not have access to the Note. And that to me becomes kind of the holistic conversation. I would expect Fold 3 and Flip 3 to sell better than Fold 2. I don't think that's a difficult benchmark to make as we get into the third generation of heavy marketing from Samsung. Are folding phones making up the difference of all of the major gaps in Samsung's premium portfolio? Sorry. From Sammy, I'm glad the Duo exists. Having two screens makes you have to change workflows. The Fold just lets you do the same thing as a slab. That's not enough of a paradigm shift. I have to give the Fold a lot of credit that Samsung is doing a pretty good job of trying to add multitasking capabilities. I think the Duo is better. From Tech Love and Mama, we'll get into the news block here after this. I get what you mean. It's been a conversation with friends about it. I don't understand some of the criticisms it gets and such, but I felt that way with the Duo. I don't get some of the things it's compared to or the negatives they have for it. And again, I always feel like that's moving the goalposts so that one phone can lose and another more accepted or familiar device can win. And I feel that's lazy reviewing. So why don't we really try and blitz through the news? It's 9:28, so whoever said like 26 minutes for housekeeping, probably pretty close. So Boeing Byte is saying 30% more than Note 20 sales, 80% better than Galaxy S21 sales in January from Samsung. I'm sure if they're shipping that much product, I feel like we'll have some good quarterlies to check out. But I seriously doubt that folding phones are doing 80% better than Galaxy S21. Well, yeah, I don't know. I do not believe we're going to see, because Galaxy S21 sales in January is one very limited metric. So if we're selling almost twice as many folding phones as we did S21s, is that what they're saying? I don't believe that. I don't. I don't believe that we're on track to sell twice as many folding phones as we are S21s. We'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is the year and they've figured it out and all of the people are down for fragile plastic screens. Okay. All of the stories we're going to be talking about, all of the news articles and all of the housekeeping, everything you can find on the show notes for this week's episode on SomeGadgetGuy.com. And yeah, I think this is news block time, and let's see if I can get it done in under half an hour. All right. Like I said, it was like news exploded over the last week. And some of this is a little dry, but it's things we're trying to keep track of, stories we're trying to follow up on. A major one has been all of the corporate security issues we've seen, from the T-Mobile hack, the supposed AT&T hack, the massive Ford sort of, it wasn't a data breach, but a sort of a friendly hacker alerted Ford to a massive hole in their cybersecurity, a gigabyte. Someone else recently, I'm missing one of them. Regardless, companies are struggling to keep up. It's a constant arms race. And so when we see these meetings, I'm encouraged. This is coming by way of the AP newsfeed. Eric Tucker: tech companies pledge billions in cybersecurity investments. The Biden administration has been urging the private sector to do its part to protect against those increasingly sophisticated attacks. In public remarks before the meeting, Biden referred to cybersecurity as a core national security challenge for the United States. Quote, "The reality is most of our critical infrastructure is owned and operated by the private sector, and the federal government can't meet this challenge alone. I've invited you all here today because you have the power, the capacity, and the responsibility, I believe, to raise the bar on cybersecurity." So ultimately, whatever your feelings are in terms of political stances and administrations and who you vote for, this is the kind of conversation I want our politicians to be having. I feel the next step is heavy debate on what we think the outcome of some of these conversations should resemble. We're going to be talking about investing public monies into law enforcement agencies, into regulatory agencies. What should the outcome be? So like the T-Mobile hack is a perfect example of this. 50 million current and former T-Mobile customers might have had their data compromised. I am the victim of identity theft. It was about 8 years ago. I'm still dealing with the ramifications of that today. You know, putting in an offer on buying a house was an extremely complicated dance of dealing with banks, the FTC, and the IRS for running my credit and verifying that I am who I say I am. That took extra time and effort and energy out of my life to do something because of my identity having been compromised 8 years ago. So what are the responsibilities? And there needs to be a carrot and stick conversation. I feel like that is a constantly evolving, a constantly adapting conversation. Whenever there is a massive breach, we need to look at, okay, how do we incentivize other companies to take this stuff seriously? And then how do we use the stick on the companies that drop the ball? And that is a massively complicated and ongoing discussion. It's never going to be decided. It's never going to be fulfilled. And that's what's so tricky for our legal system, is we make these laws. And those laws kind of exist in a more concrete like fashion. And we need to start looking at policy that adapts more fluidly and more readily to the actual challenges facing 21st century corporations. And Streamy Boys, make sure you lock your credit, folks. It's free to do. Should be a mega billion-dollar fine for T-Mobile and Equifax. And again, I believe there should be a heavy punitive aspect to this. But if we hit too hard, do other companies react poorly? You know what I mean? It sets a tone and it sets a precedent. And then if you hit one company harder than another, well, why? And then you have to engage in lawsuits like, hey, you only hit Equifax for like $100 million. Why'd you hit me for $1 billion? It's so complicated and it's gotten so messy. And the relationships between mega corporations and politicians and the consumers on the ground floor who are most affected by this, I don't know what the answer is. But at least a big public conference with politicians and the CEOs of tech companies is a place to start. In no way did this resemble finished policy, but at least it's encouraging to see a proper conversation starting on this topic. And Sam, I wish more companies did this. My work offers identity protection for Becky and the girls, including me, free for all system employees. See, I think stuff like that is great, especially moving into a new workforce, remote work, work from home. That's actually a pretty cool perk. I mean, it's not the be all end all, but it is nice. It's a consideration to say, hey, you have to use a whole bunch of web stuff and web services. You have to be your own IT, for managing your own computer systems. It's pretty heady stuff. So one of the major topics, and I don't know if Aditya is still is still in the chat here. Last week we talked about OnlyFans. They were going to be removing explicit adult content from their platform. The internet kind of exploded because that's kind of all OnlyFans is known for. And coming back into it this week, that policy seems to be getting that policy change seems to be getting reversed before it was ever fully implemented. No, I am not going to start an OnlyFans. OnlyFans is back. You jerks. I love it. So this is another AP feed, but again, this exploded all over the internet. OnlyFans reverses explicit content ban after outcry from Tali Arbel and Barbara Ortute. I have mispronounced your name, Barbara, and I apologize. AP News. I wanted to get down because there is a number. So there was a lot of charged commentary. I'm not going to be able to find it. Please read through this article, again, supporting outlets that do good journalism. This is kind of the core piece that we're going to be getting. Other outlets pick up an AP news feed and then write their own sort of editorialized version of this. And this actually does a pretty good accounting of what some of the backlash OnlyFans faced. Last week, I brought up my concerns over a platform like OnlyFans. In terms of, I have to be careful because I am now jokingly calling it OnlyFans in my brain, and it's going to slip at some point, and that's going to come out of my face. So my concerns over platforms like this, I think, deal mostly with abuse of performers, talent, whatever you want to call them, the people that actually make the content. I brought up a comparison with like those terrible cooking and life hack channels that just proliferate like weeds, like just sprout like mold in a musty bedroom. I think they are toxic. They often put out content that might be dangerous to the people who might try them. YouTube profits off of them immensely because it's such watchable clickbaity content, but the channels that make it mostly violate YouTube's terms of service. If you really look at what the rules are for thumbnails and repetitive content and recycling your content, and on top of that, they're just these content farms. And you really get the feeling that the people that are making this content just grind it, while a handful of people who own these massive content farms take almost all of the profits. So people are getting kind of, the labor is actually getting kind of abused. I have that concern with a platform like OnlyFans because I don't believe their verification process can commit to protecting vulnerable people who might be getting exploited on their platform. Someone hit me up on a comment on my website saying, well, you obviously don't know. It's more than just a credit card and a driver's license. But nothing they described would be difficult for someone to get a hold of. Models have to sign releases. Yeah, if someone's getting exploited by a content farm on OnlyFans, they'll make the talent sign releases. Like, what? I work in Hollywood. Let me tell you how enforceable, like the safety of a signed release is. That's not difficult if you're really looking to exploit the models and the performers on a platform like OnlyFans. So when it comes down to the nuts and bolts of why OnlyFans made their decision to try to remove explicit adult content, it was because of the money. adult content has an extremely difficult time existing because no bank and no credit card processing company wants to deal with adult content. Apparently, it is very common for someone to go out, buy some adult content, and then dispute the charge with their credit card company out of getting caught or some kind of embarrassment. And then OnlyFans was taking a look at this complicated market, and MasterCard had recently changed some of their policy. And so it was going to make OnlyFans' job more difficult to continue processing payments. And so they decided, well, okay, let's take the hit and let's pull explicit content. The major changes that MasterCard is bringing to the table is a higher tier of verification that performers are not being exploited on the platform. So it's not just, oh, well, banks don't want to have anything to do with porn, and OnlyFans is they just got scared. It kind of dovetails quite a bit with what I was talking about last week. If OnlyFans could verify performers more like an individual production company, keeping a roster of talent that is verified, that is regularly getting checked in on, that they have better tools for interacting with those performers and making sure that people are conducting their business in a safe and healthy fashion. If they were a more directly responsible part of that conversation, I don't think they would have had any concerns over MasterCard changing their policy on the verification of adult performers. But that's expensive, and that's difficult, and that's complicated, and it takes a lot of manpower to do that kind of outreach. So I'm hoping this is an opportunity. I'm hoping this is an opportunity for OnlyFans to take their platform, which has become synonymous with monetizing adult performers and explicit content, and they can use that as a way to change some of their conversation on verification, on performer safety, on exploitation, and that can be a good example of how to conduct business in the 21st century. They can be the example that other banks and financial institutions can look to for the way to do it right. And from there, we can kind of move forward from this era of like morality outrage over, adult content. Pornhub went through a very similar problem. Again, they didn't really change their platform because of the backlash and the outcry on non-consensually uploaded adult content. They started pulling unverified content when banks said, hey, we don't want to process your payments anymore. When the banks did that, Pornhub radically changed up their process for verifying users and they gutted a huge catalog of content. And I kind of feel like OnlyFans is going to have to find some similar mechanism in changing up how they do business. What do we say? Dave Burns. It's almost like it's a very visible, seedy underbelly we're not comfortable talking about and we're not willing to make better. Yes, there is a lot of complicated doublespeak on empowering certain communities and then trying to protect other communities, and it's so emotionally charged. We're having difficulty kind of getting down to just what the nuts and bolts mechanics of this should look like under the auspices of 21st century digital distribution. The reason why I'm always kind of interested in what the adult entertainment industry does is because a lot of what impacts these types of platforms will eventually impact mainstream platforms as well. So like, the fact that I'm on Patreon exists as kind of the inspired pay direct to the producer model that started getting adopted by clip sites and adult performer websites. This is all kind of interconnected. Just the adult industry tends to be the tip of the spear on where the rest of us will go in a couple years on new technologies. So it's heady stuff. All right, let's because this kind of segues into my first story about Apple. We have a couple Apple stories back to back to back to back. I need to take another drink of coffee here. And Blank Lux, thanks for stopping by. That was really cool. Cue this up and screen share. Apple defends its anti-child abuse imagery tech after claims of hash collision. This is written up by Motherboard, by Joseph Cox, Lorenzo B. I don't know how to pronounce that last name. I'm going to say Bichiriol, and Samantha Cole. Researchers claim they have probed a particular part of Apple's new system to detect and flag child abuse material, or CSAM, and were able to trick it into saying two images that were clearly different shared the same cryptographic fingerprint. Apple says this part of its system is not supposed to be secret, that the overall system is designed to account for this to happen in general, and that the analyzed code is not the final implementation that will be used with the CSAM system itself, and instead a generic version. I love this. Like, Apple has made a CSAM detecting hash comparing tool, and apparently there has been a hash comparing tool baked into iOS since 14.3, but this is different. Nah, what was in iOS 14.3? Nah, that's generic. It's just generic hashing for no reason. That wasn't really activated on older iPhones, but it was there in the OS. Nah, this is totally different. This hash is a girlfriend from Canada, and you just never met her. I'm still not going to be reviewing any Apple products until we see either that this hashing protocol does not deliver false positives that hurt people that shouldn't be affected by this type of phone scanning, or until Apple decides to walk back. I think this is a terrible policy. I think it is rife for abuse. And as we've seen from some of the researchers that have pulled this code and kind of replicated what it can do, it won't be difficult, IMO, to spoof, to use it to attack other people, to get law enforcement to go after people that you don't particularly like, for governments to abuse it. I think this is opening up a humongous can of worms, and the way that it is reactionary to content that has already been produced, I don't think it's going to do much to stem the tide of creating this type of media, this awful media, and I don't think it's going to have much of an impact on human trafficking and abuse. So I would highly recommend reading through this article from Motherboard. There were a number of stories that came out over the last week. You know, Apple has been working on this for a while. Parts of this seem to have already been baked into older versions of iOS. For whatever reason. We don't even know what the extent of Apple's testing has been, whether or not they've been using their own customers as guinea pigs. All of the FUD, oh no, the fear and the uncertainty and the doubt over Apple. But these kinds of write-ups help kind of break down the timeline. They sort of help illustrate none of this stuff happens in a vacuum. And as good as a one manufacturer's security policy might be, as soon as this stuff goes out into the wild, and as soon as it starts having to contend with people directly, kind of taking shots at it, that's a completely different conversation than when you're sort of in a safe dog fooding testing facility at Cupertino. So this is a pretty good highlight. And again, if you want more information on why so many people are concerned about this policy, I would highly recommend checking out the EFF, and their statements on this type of policy, I think, are very well articulated and detailed for why numerous security policy individuals are not thrilled that Apple is taking this position on scanning the content of your media. Oh, Simon. But how does it feel in the hash? From 2Turbo. Also, couldn't one just edit an image to change the hash, like a watermark or something? I don't know how hashes work, but this seems like a virtue signaling solution, not something that will actually help. So yes, you can kind of spoof images or create images that... The reason why Apple's hashing is a little different, and in my opinion, a bit scarier, is because I think it's going to be good enough to cause more problems. So a hash is just a string of numbers and letters. It's like a thumbprint. And you can take, like, say you take a photo of my face and all you do is you change it to black and white. Once you remove that color, the hash for that image would be completely different than the hash for the image with color. What Apple is saying they can do is compare the hash information with these neural processing AI learning machines and say, no, even though these hashes are totally different, we can kind of see that these images are actually very similar. And that to me is what's concerning. This is happening on the phone as you're moving content around, and especially as you're uploading content to the cloud. And Apple can dance around it. They can tell you how impressive this technology is, and I'm sure it is phenomenally impressive. But that's where I feel this could be the potential for abusing and the potential for misidentifying becomes significantly higher, and that's why I'm stumbly and stuttery when talking about stuff like this, because Apple, they don't sell off your data, This is another clumsy transition into our second of 3 Apple stories this week. Actually, there's a gadget block story about Apple too. But Apple, they care about your privacy, and they're super upfront about that. They make Facebook, put out all of those permissions about what Facebook is allowed to do and advertise on your phone. And you can tell they really mean it. They're real serious about privacy. And so they're not like Google, right? Google, they just sell off all your data. You might be able to see where I'm going with this. An analyst story on 9 to 5 Mac written up by Chance Miller. Google to pay Apple $15 billion to remain the default Safari search engine in 2021. So we've covered a number of stories like this in the past, and I'm not going to dwell too much on this. Please go read the article. You can't change the search engine in Siri, and the default search engine on all Safari is Google. So Apple is going to get $15 billion, billion with a B, in 2021, just so that when most people fire up their new Mac, their new MacBook, their new iPhone, their new iPad, and they open Safari, the primary search they interact with is going to be Google. Now, we know you can just go in and you can just change the search engine. I don't see where this is a problem. It just works. And how many people do that? The primary search engine is that core component where... Are we talking about average consumers? Are they really going in there to muck around with those kinds of settings? And I'm your great aunt, and I've decided I'm going to use DuckDuckGo. Of course not. So Apple absolutely does profit off of your data, off of your search engine history, off of your website behavior, your browsing behavior. Stop letting Apple carry a narrative which is not true. They do make money off of the data that you transfer and transmit through your browser to the tune of $15 billion. These same analysts are estimating that the 2022 payment from Google to Apple could hit as high as $20 billion. Google would not pay Apple $20 billion to be the default search engine in Safari if they didn't think they were going to get a significant impact on that kind of money being paid. Google wants to maintain the image of being the only option for search. So they're obviously not making $20 billion off of this, but they've got an image to uphold that to them is worth $20 billion just to be the first search engine someone's going to encounter on a Mac or on an iPhone. Apple gets to take all that money laughing to the bank, while at the same time they also put up, it's not us. We're not compromising your privacy. We're not selling off your data. We're just taking enormous sums of money so that someone else can run away with your data. That's totally different. It's a semantic separation that matters not at all. Boeing by Dr. Evil, $20 billion. Oh, from Streamy Boys, I'm just gonna get a flip phone at this point. Oh man. All right, one last Apple story, because this one I actually kind of feel needs a bit more meat. I'm not sure. There's some smoke here, and I'm not sure that there's much fire. I want us to keep an eye on it, because Apple puts out a very specific kind of corporate identity, sort of an imaging, what they want their brand and their label to represent. You know, Tim Cook is very upfront, using language like, we don't bully developers. We never go after them if they, disagree with our policies. All developers are created equal. So when something kind of comes out of a pool of Apple employees, it's something that I kind of feel needs to be examined in very similar ways to like what's going on in the gaming industry right now, and sort of the details of abusive behavior and worker exploitation. So this is not. I want these articles to be read because this is a story that we should follow up with over time. This headline doesn't tell much of a story, and the initial reports don't give us much information. This isn't a, now we got to go slam Apple, but we need to see, and we need to follow up, and we need to find if there's any merit to some of these accusations. So, organized under the hashtag Apple2, I guess kind of like a play on the Me Too movement. I'm sorry, Apple workers say they've collected almost 500 toxic workplace stories. This is shared by, I cannot pronounce that name, Igor. I am so sorry, but this is coming by way of Engadget. After sending out a call to action on Monday, hashtag Apple2, a group made up of current and former Apple workers looking to shine a light on the company's workplace culture, says it has collected nearly 500 stories of incidents involving discrimination, harassment, and retaliation that happened at the hands of a colleague off of campus. According to the Apple workers' Twitter account, the majority of those who got in touch asked for information on how to file a complaint with an external authority like the California Department of Fair Employment and Housing, the DFEH. And some of these sound kind of gross. I don't know how to pronounce Ashley's last name here. This is from her tweet, Ashley M. Govik, Gjovik. July 19th, I started countering Apple employee relations gaslighting by dropping concerns in our internal Slack and gathering responses from colleagues before ER uses that it's okay canned response. Here's me preparing for that. My male bosses frequently say they're open kimono. And she kind of details this with, is this a, what you should know about open kimono. This offensive phrase means to reveal what is being planned or to share important information freely. So, some troublesome language and some troubling accounts from individuals. And in our current sort of tech conversation, those things are often kind of glazed over until some kind of outside authority comes in with an investigation. When it becomes more of like when it becomes a broader lawsuit, then those claims are taken more seriously. And again, this isn't like Tim Cook advocates for abusing employees, but there could be a number of middle management team at Apple that might be problematic. And now we've got to kind of detail what might be happening internally at Apple. So that's the first kind of critical bit of information, is sort of gathering these accounts and then trying to verify, like, is this someone who's potentially just a little too sensitive? Is this someone who's misreading a situation? Or is this someone who actually is facing some kind of discrimination or abuse? The fact that so many accounts can be accrued so quickly, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what to ascribe that to. If Apple is just a really desirable target, or if Apple is such a large corporation that those little pockets of abuse can kind of fester more easily. We'll have to see. So I'm putting that one out there. A story for us to follow up on. We'll have to keep an eye on it and then see where that actually goes. Oh, yeah, I know. You can't avoid Google, even when you're on Apple. But again, I feel like that changes the conversation on like, what is Google's business model and what is Apple's claim of their business model? Oh, Dave Burns. Uh-oh. I, for one, am shocked that Apple is full of Silicon Valley tech bros. Oh, wait, I am not. Having been a part of the Hollywood system, I worked at a talent agency for a couple of years, and then I worked in casting for several years. And Hollywood is really tough. Hollywood is, by its very nature, it has to be a discriminating employment system. If you're trying to cast a show or a commercial featuring African Americans, you have to go out of your way in filing that potential job saying, oh, but no white people. It is, at its best, an incredible artistic and creative collaboration, and at its worst is an incredible cycle of abuse and exploitation. And it's not hard finding current stories showing both in our media landscape, in our media environment. I feel like the tech industry and the gaming industry, sort of corporate America outside of A-list celebrities, are now more regularly starting to find, those people calling out similar styles and similar cycles of abuse in other industries. And I think it's going to kind of keep snowballing from there. Someday maybe I will tell some of the worst stories of working at a talent agency, but actually quite a few of them would still hurt people that I genuinely like and I genuinely care about. And so you try to break it down, and it's, when we talk about systemic abuse or systemic misogyny or institutionalized racism, I didn't have employers, stomping around the office yelling the N-word. That's not racism in the context of institutionalized racism. It was always just sort of curious that certain people would get promoted above others, and there was a trend in what some employees looked like that would get promoted up and plausible deniability. They're not racist or they're not sexist, and I feel like tech companies are going to have a harder time accounting for that too. There's a certain trend of all of your upper management people with all the same backgrounds and all the same look and all the same style, and they all kind of work together, and you want to say that's a meritocracy, but that's going to be increasingly difficult to defend. So, oh man, no open kimono casting nowadays. I got to tell you, the one of the worst moments of my life as a casting director was getting propositioned by an up and coming actress who is now burned out. She's not working anymore. I passively kind of keep tabs on her because I was casting a commercial. It's a TV commercial that can pay pretty well, but we're not talking like the most amazing, like payday. It's not going to just completely launch your career. It's one good job. And getting propositioned in the booth, I had never been happier to have still been rolling audio when this offer was delivered, and to have me on the talkback politely declining and just the entitlement, the way that this offer was delivered to a married dude, and my wife is cute as a button. I mean, I dig my wife. She's a cutie. But the entitlement, you obviously want a piece of this, and if you can guarantee that I'm gonna get this TV commercial, here it is. Floored me. That was the scariest moment of my entire professional career. And again, I've got it locked up, zipped. I've got that audio file in reserve. It's like, I did the right thing. I did the right thing. Terrifying. I mean, like, I had to cancel some afternoon sessions and just like sort out the shakes of what that was like, because that was miserable. So when we see like how you get run through a cycle like that, and how it warps how business is done, and it's just so insidious and so toxic that when you try to untangle where it comes from or what it means, you almost have to take the entire industry apart to get to the root of it. So yeah, it's messy. Sorry, I kind of just, the open kimono statement, again, Hollywood casting, there are all those jokes about it, but because there are all those jokes about it, there are some people who genuinely think that's how business gets done, and that's terrifying. It's really scary when it happens. Gary. Oh man, I can't believe Linda Carter could be that desperate. She did come in for a session in one of the studios that I worked in, and I didn't get to sit in on that session. I would have loved, again, there are so many actors and actresses that I just get so nerdy lit up about. Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't get to sit in on her session. So, and Root Night, when I say it's a cycle, it is. Root Night says it sounds like a self-fulfilling prophecy. When we look at Hollywood, Hollywood is built on this generational cycle of exploiting, assistants and up-and-coming actors and using them as products to fulfill the completion of a piece of media. And then that teaches that generation what they're worth and how they should treat the next generation. And as we know, it never stays consistent. Every generation acts like they had it worse while giving it worse to the next up-and-comers. And by the time you get to someone my age, after a century of filmmaking in Hollywood, it's scary, abusive. The relationships are incredibly toxic, can be incredibly toxic. And there are still so many people that I love and admire and cherish those relationships, but it's a very small circle of people that I feel like we all speak the same language. So, Simon says, no, I'm proud of you declining Betty White's offer. One, she don't need to. Betty White does not need to audition ever. And two, if I had been propositioned by Betty White, no, I wouldn't have. But maybe, but no. But maybe, but no. All right, why don't we knock out the plug for the subreddit real quick? Because I won the subreddit again. I don't like to take as much time on the subreddit when I'm in the top spot, but it's for an exciting video. Reddit.com/r/glowing rectangles. You guys wanted to know about the Nextdoc 360, and that was the #1 voted story on the subreddit this week. I also want to point something out here real quick while I'm in the screen share. If you come over to the number of members, you'll see it now says 2,000 members. We've officially moved from 1.9 to 2K as they round up. So we're at 1,960 people participating on the subreddit. And I really need some good ideas for some kind of celebration when we properly break 2,000 subscribers. I missed it when we broke 1,000. I'm still bummed. I never went back and did something fun. Give me some ideas, hit me up on the Patreon, hit me up on Twitter, maybe even create a post. You can get some easy karma talking about the subreddit on the subreddit, and we can have a chat over what kinds of things we should do. I want to do something fun. Other top stories. Google Pixel 5a, bigger battery, taller display, $449 from user KJoss. Put out a YouTube video and just shared it on our subreddit. We also did the Pixel 5a teardown. PBK reviews, looking at that. And Pixel 5a versus Samsung Galaxy S21 camera shootout from Fandroid. If you're not following Nick Gray's work on Fandroid, you're missing some great stuff. And then Peachy finally got his hands. Scott, technically speaking, OnePlus 9 Pro versus Pixel 5 comparison. So I want to show something here, because I don't think that this is by design. I don't think that the people who are on this subreddit regularly and watching these videos and clicking on the upvote arrow are being this selective. But the top stories on Glowing Rectangles this week: Nextdoc 360 to get more use out of a phone with DeX or Ready for Screen Plus, Pixel 5a, Pixel 5a, Pixel 5a versus Galaxy S21, Pixel 5 versus OnePlus 9 Pro. We have to get down, what is this, the number 6 video? Hold on, let me count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The number 6 video is Jay Will talking about the Z Fold 3 and his first impressions. And then the number 7 video is Jeff, El Jefe Reviews, talking about the Galaxy Buds 2. We're down into the bottom 3 videos of the top 10 before we get to something Samsung Galaxy. If I were looking through my YouTube subscriptions, YouTube would be telling me the only conversation worth having is Z Fold, Z Flip. Giving people an opportunity to vote on some smaller content creators, some other topics, less popular phones, Nextdoc 360 and Pixel 5, Pixel 5a. I feel like this is a pretty good representation of how when Samsung goes after the tech reviewers and saturates all of those channels with Z Fold embargo videos, it actually does a disservice to the tech conversation. What Samsung is doing is saying, hey, we want to spread Z Fold so heavily on YouTube that a normie will find some of these videos. And someone who is not into tech will stumble onto some of this content at the expense of all the people that want to have conversations about a wider variety of tech products. Laptop docks, earbuds, and Pixel 5a dominated the top 10 spots of reddit.com/r/glowing rectangles. And Streamy Boys, the pixels ain't effing around. So, but again, I feel like we're looking at a much smaller community on Reddit versus, you know, the impossible algorithm of content distribution on YouTube. And reality is somewhere in the middle, right? I know everyone in this live chat right now is interested in what's going on with folding phones. Whether or not you personally would want to buy one, it's a conversation we want to dig into. What I am almost positive on, knowing this group of viewers that's currently watching, none of you are that interested in just having someone read the specs at you. And so now that the Z Fold is really getting into the hands of real people that really put in their money to buy one, and reviewers who aren't on the pre-release embargo video train, now is when we get those exciting conversations about the products. It's not embargo week. Embargo week is rarely informative, or at least more informative than just reading the spec sheet over at GSM Arena. Please support GSM Arena because they do amazing quality work. Because of GSM Arena, I don't have to read specs at you. So I'm not dismissing what they do. I celebrate it as a reviewer because they are the resource I turn to, and you should as well. Reddit.com/r/glowing rectangles. Give it a look. Take it for a spin. See how it fits you. But if you want a broader, sort of more grassroots kind of tech overview, landscape of tech, I hope you'll check out the subreddit, and please do not be stingy with the upvotes. There's so many creators there that will start finding a little bit more traction, better SEO, get shared by larger subreddits, and they deserve all of that extra attention. So, is this Anmurchu? Murchu? I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm sorry. Do you not enjoy the oversaturated B-roll? I shoot terrible B-roll, but I shoot it very practically. I'm just trying to show you the thing I'm talking about so that we can move on. I really cannot take the time away from using the gadget to like perfectly pan a shot. I mean, it's a glowing rectangle. It's a glowing rectangle. It's a glowing rectangle. There is no interesting tracking shot for that, right? It's gotten pretty silly. Maybe it's a little bit more worth it on something that can do things like, oh, this is kind of fun. It's got a hinge. But even then, I feel like my ability to make that look cool through camera techniques pales in comparison to me just showing you the thing that I want to talk about on it. So let me take another drink of water here. So one more. Reddit.com/r/glowing rectangles. And now let's get into the gadget block. Oh, Greg's taking off. Everyone say, hey, Greg. Greg was the winner of those Eco Gems, those $200 in-ear monitor buds. I gave them out 2 weeks ago. Totally dropped the ball on sending them to him. I finally got them out to him last week. He's finally enjoying those buds. But Greg has been an incredible contributor and supporter of various tech communities out there. And we've been having a lot of conversations about like 3D printing and flashing custom ROMs. So Greg's good people. And thank you for dropping by, Greg. I really appreciate it. So, small snippets of tech stories today. Apparently, Samsung's explode. Am I right? Am I right? Up top. High five. Obvious joke is obvious. This comes by way of Phone Arena. Samsung Galaxy A21 catches fire in airplane, causing mass evacuation. But I love this write-up. After a brief break from the previously rampant tales of Galaxy S7s catching fire, not unaccompanied by the occasional self-combusting iPhone or iPhone accessory wreaking havoc on unsuspecting users, we finally got another one on our hands. So first of all, kudos for not bringing up the Note 7, because the proliferation of S7s that caught fire was way lower. I mean, the Galaxy S7, if I remember correctly, was in just sort of the same margin of error territory as any other phone. Any other phone can be compromised. You can have a one-off or maybe a small batch of manufacturing issues. Most of them will never have any problems, and then one or two catch on fire. And we make a headline out of that. But apparently now it's a thing. The Galaxy S7 exploding is a thing. This is a hilarious write-up. Basically, almost every single sort of tech blog, not just news feeds, but like a proper tech blog that ran with this story, had to make some kind of allusion to Note 7. This one I thought was hilarious because they took it to the S7 being the problematic phone, which we all know is incorrect. So, yeah, individual phones will have problems. I am actually shocked that we don't hear about more devices on planes having issues. I mean, it's the scariest place to consider having, you know, the enormous power discharge of a phone battery in an enclosed pressurized cabin. But this happened to a Galaxy A21, and that's one phone. And that's actually one I haven't heard, and someone please correct me if I'm just missing it. I have not heard any significant reliability or public health and safety issues with Galaxy A series. It always seems to be the more ambitious products like Galaxy S that seem to suffer more because you're actually trying to like cram more stuff into an increasingly smaller cavity. Oh, Longenman is gifting a tier 1 sub. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Gifted a tier 1 sub to Trey916. That is super cool of you. I really do appreciate the support. Again, just keeping the channel rolling, that kind of stuff really does help. And I appreciate you. From Gary, I believe it was burned beyond recognition. Walt, that's dirty, Walt. Hold on, I gotta scroll back up because wait till they catch a passenger with a boot looping LG. Gasp, shock, and horror. Oh, that's hilarious. Well, no, I know this is the point. So StreamyWays is saying no one talks about A series because techies think they are peasant phones. But if there were some kind of systemic manufacturing or battery defect on Galaxy A series, Samsung makes so many more of those that I think we would hear something about that, right? Samsung is basically profiting the most off of A series. They sold more phones in the first 6 months of 2021 than they did in 2020. They sold a significantly higher number of mid-rangers and A series phones. So if there were a problem, this is what was so frustrating to me. And one A21 catching on fire is not a trend, and I haven't heard of anything else to indicate that the A series is dangerous like the Note 7 was. So that's what's frustrating to me. By stapling this to other phones that have had problems, it makes it sound like it's a more systemic issue when this is exactly the kind of phone more mainstream consumers should actually be shopping. I'm far more positive on Galaxy A than I am on anything else Samsung is doing right now. Oh, Longenman, another one. That is very generous of you, and I very much appreciate that. Longenman is gifting another tier 1 sub to Billy Quizboy. Thank you so much. And again, supporting, you're rad. I appreciate you. Moving on to some other tech stories here real quick. Your older iPhones apparently still get battery throttled. And if you switch the region to France because of the different kinds of lawsuits that Apple has had to face in different countries, your phone will get faster. So if you have an older iPhone and you live in France, you don't have to deal with battery throttling. Apparently that's not a problem for you as your battery degrades like it is in other regions. And the joke of this is also you can go into the battery stats and change your throttling behavior. So let's say your phone battery has aged and it's slowing it down, then and Apple is slowing your phone down, you can go in and say, hey, give me full performance, and just know that your phone's probably going to die way faster and that the battery might not sustain to the full rated charge of that battery. Apparently you don't need to do that if you live in France. Apparently the phone just operates at full speed and you don't have to mess around with kind of an underreported aspect of iOS that a lot of consumers don't even know is on their phone, in terms of battery health being like, what is it, it's 4 levels deep to get to that toggle. You got to go into your settings, go into general, go into battery, and then go into battery health, see the battery health, and then deactivate any type of battery throttling. Someone tell me if I maybe missed that. I might have that wrong. Anyway, people in France don't have to mess with that. So Apple always does things, it just works, and it just works better in France. And then we don't really have a ton of news. This is just the rumor machine. But this one seems pretty likely. Again, given when iPhones are probably going to be announced and are going to start shipping to consumers. Google Pixel 6 and 6 Pro tipped for September 13th global launch. A new leak has tipped Google's upcoming premium phones, the Pixel 6 and 6 Pro, to launch within the next few weeks, on September 13, to be exact. The phones will offer premium specifications and are expected to debut as two of the best camera smartphones on the market. And in addition to this, knowing that they're using Samsung Fab, and this is likely going to be kind of a combination of an Exynos processor and Google neural hardware or co-processors, we're also getting the word that Google is going to use Samsung modems. Google brings Samsung 5G modem tech to the US market with the new Pixel phone. This is written up on Reuters by Stephen Ellis and Paresh Dave. So positives and negatives. One, I'm still critically excited for Tensor. Google's custom SoC is going to be, I feel, is going to be an important step in competition. I hope it is built with thermals in mind, and that performance is not impacted by thermal instability, like certain phones can throttle really aggressively. But what I'm hoping to see are those Google co-processors really light up faster video and photo manipulation. Again, the processing that goes into making a good pixel photo was faster on a Pixel 4 than it currently is on like a Pixel 5 or a Pixel 5a. And you can see, you take like a couple photos back to back to back, and then you go into your gallery, and it takes a second to cycle. So if Google is moving some of the heaviest workload for consumers, I know one of them is called the 6 Pro, however pro that phone might be. But if you take like the video and photo post-processing off of the Exynos, and you move that to one of these co-processors, that could be a really winning combination. You know, you only have kind of peak horsepower sustained from the CPU when you absolutely need it, and you don't need it for one of the heavier use aspects that a lot of consumers are going to use. The Pixel 4 still represents one of the absolute fastest devices for chewing up video data available today. I don't know what it is that Google does in tying neural core into things like Power Director or video editing software. It is incredibly fast. So even though you get this pokey Geekbench score, when you really do heavy lifting, 4K video editing and rendering, it's tough to beat a Pixel 4. So if I could get current generation Exynos, which, I mean, that's probably not as good CPU core against a Snapdragon, but if we're not relying on that for all of this image manipulation and we're going to custom Google hardware, that to me could be really exciting. The only other thing though is because it's an Exynos, and Google really is trying, it looks like they are trying to kind of separate their chip fabrication and design from Snapdragons, which makes sense. I have no experiences with an Exynos modem. I have no idea how competitive they might be. Is this Intel territory where iPhones were hot garbage for, you know, cell phone connectivity for years? Or is this like kind of a midpoint? Are they competitive against Snapdragon modems and radios? I genuinely don't know. So that'll be kind of the big mystery and the big play. I'm phenomenally excited. I want better competition. I'm stoked to see Google coming back to making a premium tier phone. And now we just got to see, how does it work? Oh, and that's kind of cool. Simon Says Hypno says they are saying that the Pixel 6s will have ultra wideband. So if they have millimeter wave, Samsung's modems must be decently competitive. Just kind of, again, it's kind of an unknown until we get to see it. And Gary the Fireman! Hi, thanks, Gary. Gary gifted a tier 1 sub to Aditya Anil. Gary has gifted 204 subs on this channel. Gary, you're rocking my socks, man. Thank you so much. That is very generous of you, and I really appreciate all the support. What was Trey? Sorry, I'm going back through the comments here. Who knows? First Exynos was better than Qualcomm. Then they were garbage. Now they might be better again. Who can stay on top of it all? So current gen, and this is where I don't know. When we look at Samsung's implementation of a big power core versus Qualcomm's version of this on the A88, we've gone from 4 big cores and 4 small cores to 1 really big core, 3 big cores, and 4 little cores. And to me, I feel it's this 1X1 core, the big, powerful laptop grade compute core that actually is causing a bit more, causing a few more problems than it's solving. It is incredibly powerful. It really is. And especially when you can link it up to the right application like audio processing. When I render audio, I can cut MP3s faster on my phone than I can on my Threadripper. There's just something about what that core is doing to audio evolution, and the final processing is insanely fast. That's great. When that CPU core starts running hard, though, on other applications, and especially for longer sustained use, it throttles hard because it's running so hot. So that's where I'm anxious. The Samsung version of this idea doesn't seem to perform as well as the Qualcomm version of this idea. They start out very similarly, but the Exynos seems to degrade and throttle faster than the Snapdragon. Both will drop, both will throttle, but Samsung's solution seems to throttle a little sooner. Especially like if we're only doing this on synthetic benchmark testing, you can catch Speed Test G. Gary explains ran like a burst of cycles of Speed Test G and saw like, you know, how performance dropped sooner on the Exynos and then it dropped lower on the Exynos than it did on the Qualcomm. So it's a concern. What I'm hoping is that the core structure of the Tensor is actually a little bit more like last year's processors. If it were a little bit more like the 865 and we were relying on co-processors for heavy lifting like image data, it's not going to matter. You know, again, you're going to put out all these geek benches like, oh, the power is like the same as a Snapdragon 870. Nothing is tanking the Snapdragon 870. The 870 and the 865 are still baller and more consistent performers. So that's what I'm hoping, but I'm worried what we might get is an X1 core from Samsung's design, the Exynos version of this idea, and then hopefully we just don't have to hit that X1 core as heavy because we're going to be using the co-processors more frequently. That was a lot of nerd. That was as nerdy as I think this podcast can get. And Gabaletta, I completely agree because that's what I believe this is the first step towards. Gabaletta says they should have used the X1 core for tablets and laptops. When Apple rocked everybody with the M1 is kind of derived from the previous generations of A series processors. Not A series in phones, but A series from iPads. Those are different delineations of processor design. So I kind of feel like ARM in making their reference design, Qualcomm and Samsung in looking at ARM's reference design, were all gunning for the next bump. They felt, I really think they felt the die shrink, making the fabrication process a little smaller, was going to offset the power needs of putting in a substantially more powerful big core. And I don't think that's proven to be true. in real world performance. You have to be very judicious about how you use the A88, and you can. There are some incredible benefits to using an A88, but if you're looking at daily drivery things, it's not a better performer than an 865. I mean, all around, I agree with this statement from Streamy Boys. The 865 is still a more than capable chip. Not only more than capable, I think it is the more consistent, higher performing chip than the 888. I feel the 888 spikes and drops and spikes and drops and spikes and drops, and the 865 is more capable of just a higher average performance than what the 888 can achieve. All right, so Pixel 6. This is maybe, I think, the most important smartphone launch for me, the second half of this year. The phone I really want to try and get my hands back on now that it's finally shipping out to consumers is the Xperia 1 Mark III. And if we're going to call a Pixel 6 Pro a Pro, I am really anxious. I want to hold that phone up against an Xperia 1 Mark III, which I feel is kind of the best iteration of a Pro phone comes from Sony. So that to me is now becoming the brutal showdown in my brain, especially since we don't get a V70 this year. I desperately want that. And Longenman, another tier 1 sub to Walt Semarista. Longenman, you're rocking my socks. I genuinely, I'm getting like, a little blush, a little appreciative there. Thank you so much. That's awesome. You've been killing it on this stream, and it's exactly because of that kind of stuff. I need to do a better job of coming up with some kind of like highlight or award. I'm so bad at Twitch plugins. I really need to get better at that, and so we can actually properly shout out the people that are supporting on this podcast. So yes, my big showdown for 2021 is probably going to be Xperia 1 Mark III versus Pixel 6 Pro. And then I also want to take that back and look at Pixel 6 Pro versus my OnePlus 9 Pro, where the camera improvements on OnePlus, I feel that is going to be one of the best showdowns. The hardware on like the ultra wide versus the hardware on Google's telephoto. OnePlus's improved software processing against Google's dominance in post processing. That to me is going to be I'm going to be shooting on these phones for days to kind of rack up samples and compare and contrast. So I want to wrap this up. I don't have any good images because I didn't plan ahead. But I spent some time hanging out with TK Bay last Friday. Come on, learn more. There we go. So I'm just going to occasionally sort of reference Samsung's website. Because I didn't shoot any B-roll, and I just wanted to kind of take the time to just hold it and poke around on it and use it for a second, not trying to turn it into some kind of one-off video. I want to kind of cap this week's podcast talking about the Z Fold 3 and the Z Flip 3. And I'm going to take a drink of water here real quick while I... And Aditya Anil, I mean, I actually got to hang out with him in person, so I'm pretty sure it's TK my bay. I don't know where you all get to share him. He's mine. My precious. So anyway, TK took the hit, and he picked up a Z Fold 3 and a Z Flip 3, and he's been making some content, and he showed them off on our show on Friday. So if you want to see kind of like that real world conversation, we were out in the field kind of talking about these two phones. And my initial impressions from Samsung's press release were heavily reinforced, getting to handle both of these products. I am even less positive on the Z Fold 3, and I'm a little bit more positive on the Z Flip. It's funny. I just got done talking about, like at the beginning of this podcast, I was talking about like Steve Litchfield. There's an individual that I feel has done an amazing job of trying to talk about portable computing devices and how to maximize what you get out of them. And the Z Flip 3 is not that conversation at all. So, hold on. Let me see if I can find... Samsung's website is so annoying. So the Fold 3 is the big heavy here, and I'm trying to get down to the Z Flip 3. Wow. This is so silly. Sorry, I just want something more interesting to look at than my face. There we go. So while I just kind of screen share some stuff here. So the Z Flip, it's a Snapdragon 888 with a tiny battery, no video output, no DeX, limited functionality, only 2 camera sensors. Why Z Flip? Why the Flip in my argument of premium phones and getting the best bang for your buck? And it comes down to some of these little lifestyle things, like when we look at the ticker display by the camera sensors, when we look at the flex mode, and when we look at the overall form factor collapsing into something that's about the size of a makeup compact. Even though so many features have been removed, what we arrive at is more familiar. It opens up to look like a phone that we understand, and it folds up into something that takes up, I mean, it's the same volume as a regular phone. It's 2 phones thick when you really close that hinge. But to me, this is more familiar, more accessible, is going to be easier to buy. We know Samsung's going to like juice the market with a whole bunch of like trade-in offers, and the carriers are going to do trade-ins and BOGOs and all that crazy stuff. After a couple months, it's probably going to go on sale. So if you bought it pre-order full MSRP, you're very foolish, and I'm sorry. That's never how you should buy a Samsung. But it represents a conversation as a fashion statement that gels with some of my feelings on things like fancy purses. It's capable. It's gonna be a communications device, but this is the next phase of communicator. This is what's exciting to me. This is a pocket smartwatch in the best possible way. When we look at something like the Palm, you remember that little Palm Gem Nugget phone? I think that was also made by TCL. It was just licensing the Palm name. That's a pocket smartwatch. It's a smartwatch that you keep in your pocket like a pocket watch, but it's a pocket smartwatch. At a glance, brief interactions, if that's your jam, then there's something I think very exciting about the Flip 3. If you need to pull it out of your purse and you're not wearing something on your wrist, little ticker display, get your immediate notification, put it back away and get on with your day. Only when you need to interact with something more meaningfully do you need to open it up. And when we have this brief at a glance style interaction, it greatly reduces the need to fully invest in the smartphone interaction. It's why I'm still so sad about losing Focals by North, is because that smartwatch style notification was just up at eye level all the time I needed it. That to me was brilliant. I hate going back to a watch, like even this is a step less organic and a step removed from what I loved about the Focals by North. So the Z Flip builds that into its DNA. It is not, Samsung is correctly not making the argument that this is the powerhouse device, this is the productivity device. It's not trying to sell us on that. And I think this is the most honest that Samsung has ever been with one of their products. They sell everyday epic. Do what you can't. It's so amazeballs. And they're not doing that with the Flip. I mean, I think it's kind of cheeky and it's a little snarky to say the Flip is a statement phone. It makes a statement. It's a fashion accessory. But that's okay. That's okay if it's being sold that way and consumers are genuinely getting what they're supposed to be getting. Again, I don't buy $4,000 purses, right? So I'm not a part of that conversation. I don't make videos for the people that consider their lifestyle fashion when it comes to like buying a smartphone. I'm not that person. But I feel like the Flip rises to the occasion of talking about that kind of consumer interaction, that kind of fashion forward. It's a talking point. Someone is going to see you open that and they're going to want to ask a question about that. You get to be seen with it. The last time I really had that feeling, like the Duo shocked so much of my family. But when I'm out and about using it, I'm using it single screen. So it doesn't really put off any kind of crazy, this phone does something different kind of vibe. I'm not at a grocery store making a big play out of using the full tablet of my Duo. I'm keeping it like this to keep interactions simpler and faster, and I can kind of get through the grocery store with minimal potential disease infection. The Z Flip is going to more readily be that kind of talking point. The last time I really feel like some people were stopping me to ask about my phone was on the Honor, that really pretty blue laser etched glass Honor that had that kind of V cut to the, what was that? The Honor 8. That was the last time, like, cashiers were asking me, like, what's that case on your iPhone? That's beautiful. I was at a post office and I was just kind of messing around with it, and I held it up and someone like stopped and like they're walking past me and like stared into the back of my phone. That was the last time I really felt like a fashion flex in something that I was using. So Z Flip, and when TK had it and I'm opening it, I'm closing it, I am still terrified of that plastic seam where the phone, the hinge actually closes the device. There are so many examples of the previous generation Flip cracking right on that seam. All of the examples of devices that have bubbled, where gaps in the screen form and you can kind of hear or even sometimes see kind of a tacky bubble. Not tacky as in lame or unfashionable, tacky as in literally like it kind of sticks into the phone and then that was my ASMR vocal reproduction of a problem on previous generation Z Flip. This recommendation for a Z Flip has to be, you're going to spend premium tier cash on a device. You appreciate the sort of forward thinking fashion of this device, and you are not a heavy user. What you're looking for in a phone is a premium communicator experience at a glance, brief interactions, quick and to the point, and you're not really looking to run a pocket computer hard. That's a pretty narrow recommendation, but one that I feel is honest, right? I think more people would do well kind of honestly looking into their needs and their wants and the use they have of their the smartphone purchasing. But in that, I feel very confident on Z Flip belonging to that club. If you're the type of person who thinks you're going to constantly be opening this phone and closing it, opening it, using it, digging your thumbs into the screen to play games, closing it, opening it, looking up maps, lots of longer term use, and you want to do some work on it, run away. Do not buy a Z Flip 3. But again, if you're looking for a pocket smartwatch, this is now the premium example of a pocket smartwatch. Where even like an iPhone SE is in the same kind of class of at a glance, brief interaction styles of smartphone. The Z Flip is the premium fashionable version of this idea. And then there are budget versions of that idea where you can spend a lot less money if you're looking for just covering the basics. That crease, as I ran my thumb over it, as I interacted with it, as you know, I'm poking around on the screen, I just think about, like, man, when I'm playing Dead Cells and I'm really digging my thumbs dual stick into the sides of my screen, I do not trust folding phones at all. And I know so many people said, well, no, I mean, like, I took care of my Z Fold 2 and I wasn't babying that phone, but, you know, it lasted just fine. I don't think so. It's not, I don't think that's the kind of use you can really sustain, even with the improvements that Samsung has made to this manufacturing process. But I do think it's funny. Like, I don't, someone please tell me, I have not dug so deep into Samsung's website. Can someone in the chat, or if you're catching this after the fact, like hit me up on the comments or in the replay crew or hit me up on Twitter. Do they still say the screen is made of foldable glass? As I'm looking through right now, it's flex mode and ready, set, go. And look, the cameras are totally adequate on a $1,000 phone and dual preview. And oh, wow, you can prop up your selfie camera. Isn't that amazing? But what I can't see is flexibility meets fortified here. So the big get this year, remember last year, they made a big deal out of how, oh no, it's real glass. It's really glass. It's real glass. It's glass that folds, even though that's sort of mechanically impossible. So here's on the Samsung website, flexible meets fortified. And you're like, okay, yeah, you folded it in half. Is this bendable glass? I'm pretty sure it's just plastic. Oh, it's got an IPX rating now. So it's IPX8. So, you know, it can get hit with water. Okay, pretty and tough. A phone this stunning should stay that way. Z Flip 3 5G is finished with durable material, so you can put it in your bag with less worry. But it doesn't say foldable glass. This is basically just them saying, oh, we put a better screen protector on it. Not that it's made out of bendable glass. Oh, nope, there it is. Don't let the name fool you. Samsung ultra thin glass isn't just flexible. I think that should be a comma. Hold on. Don't let the name fool you. Samsung ultra thin glass isn't just flexible. Yeah, I don't think that sentence is written correctly. It's also more durable than ever with the addition of a new protective layer and film. That is such a disingenuous claim to say we've put in a material that is sort of silicate in nature and is like glass, but the screen is basically just as durable as plastic. Yeah, ultra thin glass might just be, it absolutely is. A Trey 916 is saying ultra thin glass, ultra thin glass is just might just be a trademark. Last year, they broke the laws of physics, from McCorcoran. And Simon says, Hypno, I want to read through this. The first S Pen on a foldable. What does this say? The first S Pen on a foldable, get precision your fingers could only dream of as you put pen to glass, and you can watch, video call, and more hands-free with flex mode. It splits the screen in two, letting you work smarter, like taking a call on the top half and sketching ideas on the lower half. So that's kind of the point that we can transition over to Z Fold. Because the Z Fold, I'm less positive on. So handling TKs, and I'm not trying to besmirch TK. I'm glad he grabbed these phones so that I don't have to. I still don't get who the Z Fold 3 is really going to be for. What we have on the Z Fold 3 is very similar to the Z Fold 2. It does close a little bit thinner and it is a little bit lighter, but this is a square tablet that folds in half to become an ultra skinny phone. So, you know, this outer display is now crazy skinny, just like the Z Fold 2, and the Z Fold 3 opens up to being a very sort of awkward square. Android isn't that smart at finding ways to reformat apps based on aspect ratio and resolution. And, you know, it's these types of images that crack me up. So what I'm showing on the screen right now is an image of, what is it? La Casa de Papel? Is that, I can't read what that other word there is. It's a show on Netflix. So Netflix, there's a woman in a tree, watching Netflix on her big tablet. It is showing the Netflix show full screen on the Z Fold 3. That means it is incredibly cropped to fit a 4:3 aspect ratio. I mean, someone called me out on this when I made fun of this before. I think the only current new piece of media would be the Snyder Cut, right? Not a lot of media is made for 4:3. Old TV shows or those terrible early DVDs. You would have to look, is this DVD full screen or wide screen? Because consumers back then didn't understand like letterboxing. I remember I was before my family really had cable. I was visiting my grandmother, and I think it was on TNT, and they were showing a special print of 2001: A Space Odyssey. And for days, I mean, this was like a family event. We were all going to sit down and watch 2001: A Space Odyssey, and this time it was going to be special for TV because they were actually going to be showing a letterboxed version of 2001: A Space Odyssey on broadcast television. And for days leading up to this broadcast, TNT had these special commercials saying, don't be alarmed, there's nothing wrong with your television, but there will be black bars at the top and bottom of your screen so that we can properly show you the full film 2001: A Space Odyssey. Now, flash forward to the year 2021, and Samsung is generating images of TV shows on Netflix that are full screen at 4:3. And I feel like if Samsung had the money, oh yeah, Dave Burns, yeah, completely. If Samsung had the money, they missed a huge opportunity. Where's that comment? There it is. They missed a huge opportunity to just show the Snyder Cut. You know, if Samsung just paid for the licensing to show that, that would have been one of the more honest depictions of what media looks like on the Z Fold. So the hardware is refined. It is a little bit skinnier, and it definitely reads a little bit skinnier when you fold it all up. I've seen a couple of reviews saying, hey, it's actually a touch thicker when it's fully unfurled. But at this point, you know, like a fraction of a millimeter matters way less to me after using something like the Duo. Because the Duo totally closed is almost as thick as 1/2 of the Z Fold. And so when you open this, and this is like 2/3 the thickness of an iPhone SE when it's fully open, this feels like a radical departure in terms of phone and tablet design, and the Z Fold doesn't. So there aren't a lot of apps that really take advantage of the full 4:3 canvas. Samsung has done a lot of really savvy customization work trying to get different apps to fit different aspect ratios. But again, when it's only Samsung and it's not a core part of Android, you're going to run into a lot of inconsistencies on UI and formatting and aspect ratios, so that when you do get into something like flex mode and it's half of a 4:3 display, the look on that can be kind of funky. I mean, I know I'm constantly referencing and bringing up the Duo, which has sort of these 4:3 panels, but can open up to a wider full screen, or is only split screening its apps on a sort of a wider canvas. I think this is the more practical, the Duo is the more practical version of this idea. It's just a little less exciting because it's dual display and not a single folding display. But actually getting to hold it and getting to play with it, the hinges feel great. The build quality is always that reassuring kind of ratcheting feel. It doesn't feel as nice as a Duo. It really doesn't. And especially when you consider the Duo is a 360-degree wraparound hinge, and the Samsung only has to open 180 degrees. Like it's cool, but that necessitates a design where you have an outer display and an inner display. that crease, that plastic lump is even more pronounced on the Z Fold 3 than it is on the Z Flip 3. And the idea of raking a pen against, I know the pen has like a shock absorber and it's a softer tip and all these things that Samsung has had to do to try and implement S Pen. I still don't trust the durability for the same kind of use that I wouldn't think twice on a Galaxy Note. Like my Note 4 is still going strong. I'm kind of toying with the idea of picking up a Note 20. If it's really going to be the last Note, maybe that'll be like my last museum piece from Samsung. So it's way less reassuring and it's more compromised. So at $1,800, $2,000 after tax here in Southern California, for the base model without an S Pen, I'm not sure what usage this really satisfies that wouldn't be better fulfilled by buying a nice phone and a nice tablet. Shopping something in the S21 range or a OnePlus 9 range, and then also picking up like a Tab S6 would probably be a better all-around combo of devices, and you'd save... I mean, if you're really savvy at shopping, you could save around $700 picking up that combo and it being more functional. So you'd have $700 more dollars for accessories and for extra equipment. That's where I'm running into this issue. If you're already near $2,000 for this folding tablet, why not just go balls to the wall? Why not offer one that has the ultra camera sensors on it? Why not offer one that has, just the most extreme version of what it is that Samsung can offer, the everything in the kitchen sink? I don't understand this. Let's compromise on some of these features and whittle back so that we can hit a lower price point on a product that is already head and shoulders more expensive than anything near it. And that's, to me, what really hurts my brain. It's where I have the most difficulty trying to rationalize the Z Fold 3. It can't really completely live all on its own. It's not really gonna... Well, with some help, it can kind of move you away from always needing a laptop, but it needs the help. And it does so in a more fragile form factor that kind of necessitates that you're also going to have a companion device. Like, I can't take a folding phone to the beach. So if I've got my beautiful Surface Duo here and I want to go down to the beach, well, it's a good thing that I have phones like Pixel 4a's or iPhone SE's, because I kind of need it if I'm going to go somewhere that is, a more aggressive or harsh climate or has more danger of like dust and debris. Like, the Duo is not going to go on a crazy, brutal, rugged hike, or it's not going to go camping with me. I need something else. And at $2,000 to need something else feels weird in my brain when it still really doesn't quite kind of live up to that, even just that single screen idea of what the Note was, as like the powerhouse, everything in the kitchen sink kind of device. So, I only briefly shot a couple little sample photos off the cameras, and I bent it in half and I opened it and I closed it. And yeah, I guess. But, this 4x3 look, not a lot of games are gonna just work great in that. The apps format kind of strangely, and we need a lot of work on bringing paneled views to our smartphones. More apps getting smarter about split screen multitasking. I don't know that Samsung has really moved the needle on that as far as they're claiming to. I think, again, you see this kind of triple. So what I'm showing right here is using the S Pen to do some sketching, like for some fashion work. Like, that's kind of cool. And then On a third of the screen, oh, I'm sorry, a quarter of the screen is watching a live fashion show in YouTube, and then another quarter of the screen looks like some kind of, I don't know, like photo sharing, not kind of like Instagram or some other type of photo sharing. So a quarter of the screen is a YouTube video in a 4:3 aspect ratio, which doesn't really exist. And a quarter of the screen is a photo from like an Instagram, but you can only see one photo. And then half the screen is a vertical, super skinny sketching pad for doodling a fashion, a dress concept. When I would show things like that on the V60, which had slightly broader displays, they're 20:9. A lot of people, well, no one's going to do things like that on their phones. You can put two apps on the main phone, and you can do a third app. You can triple multitask on a V60 or a Velvet. Well, no, that's not really a thing. People aren't going to do that. But the aspect ratios actually worked out better for that kind of multitasking than how narrow this stuff gets on the Z Fold. And on those dual display phones, you had higher resolution over a wider surface area. So not only did you have more screen to work with, you had more pixels to draw with. So it's that kind of stuff that just, I don't think it gets us there. I think it's going to be cool to show off, and it's going to be fun to use, and it's going to be kind of nifty to flex that you've got this thing that kind of folds and bends, and it's got all this functionality. But I'm struggling. I don't feel like this really does properly unseat dual display, and we need a lot of work from Microsoft and from Google to improve app development so that it can better take advantage of this kind of tablety screen real estate. From McCorcoran, hold on. Sorry, I'm way behind on the chat. I was rambling quite a bit there. So this is one of my main arguments here. McCorcoran, they need a Fold FE with a mid-range chip if they want mainstream users. I really, really, really want Galaxy A to start having folding options. This to me would, again, it would be another step in validating and bringing this folding experience to consumers. I completely agree. Because so much of what they're showing is not horsepower dependent. I mean, I get it. You want to go all out, but the Fold 3 is already compromised. It's not an all-out product. But you've got the really, really hot, powerful chipset, and then kind of mid-range cameras from Samsung's whole lineup. So you're spending a lot on a product that's kind of halfway. Again, it's all these half measures to try and drop the price, but you're already crazy expensive. So why drop the price? Why not make the statement of everything that Samsung does the best? From Simon Says Hypno, I'm worried about that Doodle's lower lumbar at that position. Yeah, that spine doesn't seem like it really lines up with how the human body should be doing it. From Streamy Boys, I'm so tired of TechTuber saying Samsung is bringing foldables to the masses because they have trade-in deals. Most average consumers still can't afford these devices. And we've said it before, we'll say it again, average consumers buy average phones. McCorcoran also showing some LG love. For the same price, you could get a V60 dual screen, LG Wing Duo, and a Pixel 4a. From Trey, I hate sand, Anakin Skywalker, and Galaxy Fold 3. I don't like sand. From Tech Lovin' Mama, as someone who edits on their portable devices, I'm excited to use the S Pen Pro with my Tab S7 Plus and my Fold 3. Haven't gotten it yet. I guess my order is being delayed. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. That is such a bummer. Tech Lovin' Mama. Everyone should also look up TLM, Tech Lovin' Mama's YouTube channel. I'll be really curious to hear what your thoughts are, because I'm going to be coming at Z Fold and Z Flip late if I cover them heavily at all. I don't feel like I need to break my neck to jump on the hype train for the initial release. I'm still pretty confident we'll see some price cuts later on. I'm not really looking to throw a bunch of trade-in phones at Samsung because that makes me sad. I've got like my museum of phones. I don't want to give Samsung 4 phones so I can save some cash on a Z Fold. And so what I'll be curious to see, and especially like Tech Love and Mama and some of the other crew, like Gadget Goddess, Barry Johnson, who else was getting? Oh, or like Easy Computer Solutions. Seeing what your experiences are playing with some of these folding phones. I'm skeptical, but again, it's funny where the phone that I think makes less impressive claims to me feels like the more honest buy. And when it comes to something like doing some heavy video editing, like for example, if you fire up Power Director on a 4:3 display, is Power Director gonna follow the orientation correctly? Because if your timeline on Power Director is taking up the bottom 2/3, like where is the, yeah, we can, oh, not there. There was one of these images where they have, yeah, here. So here the Z Fold 3 is sideways. So it's in more of the landscape orientation for a 4:3 frame. But if you're in Power Director, the upper third of your display is basically going to be mostly wasted space. And you can see this teeny little video chat window that they're showing. That's gonna kind of be what your video looks like while you're editing. So you have room underneath that for all of your tracks to organize. So that kind of stuff is going to be tough because the app doesn't really know what to do with a changing aspect ratio and a changing orientation. So yeah, that's kind of enough rambling on. But I am sorry to hear that your pre-order got bumped. Because again, I feel like yours is one of those voices that I would be much more interested in seeing your real world use, knowing that you've done things like edit videos on your phones, which is like a bridge too far for mainstream tech reviewers. I was reading one review and it was hilarious, and I feel bad like kind of mocking it, but I'm not going to call them out directly. I swear it was Z Fold 3, and they're like, well, I opened up one app on half the screen and another app on the other half the screen so I could Slack while I also watched a YouTube video. And you're like, where's the use on that? Has everyone forgotten that like Android has been able to split screen since what, like the Note 4, Note 3, somewhere in there? Like that idea of multitasking is so quaint. And I want to like, I would routinely have triple app going on my V60. Like I'd have a Discord chat going, I'd be watching a movie or a video, and then I'd also be keeping up on Twitter. And I'd constantly be moving those around. It was a really bad habit to get into, but like that's the kind of stuff, if we're gonna drive a Z Fold for a consumer to get $2,000 worth of use out of their phone, I wanna see this thing like displace gaming laptops. I want to see this thing like make it so you never have to travel with a nice camera and a full computer. You could get away with a portable monitor or a keyboard or something. So I'm just real cranky pants about, one, the lowest expectations for a $2,000 phone coming from reviewers. And then that also comes at the expense of all the people that genuinely will try to use this thing more aggressively. Tech Love and Mama, a perfect example in our chat right now. And by the time she gets her hands on it, the YouTube algorithm is already going to be starting to wane on the popularity, because in another week, new iPhones are going to be announced. And you're like, that is crazy to me. The topic is already starting to be over before consumers who pre-ordered have all gotten their devices, have all gotten their shipments. That's too fast. That's not even, entertaining anymore. You never get to dig any deeper than pretty B-roll, reading the specs, thumbs up, thumbs down, worth it or not worth it, and that can only be based on the popularity of the manufacturer. We're always going to savage the devices that are less popular to support the hyper-aggressive cycle, the churn of Apple and Samsung launch events here in the United States. If you're in another country, you get the benefit of having Xiaomi's and Oppos and BBK and Vivos and Blues that we don't get to play with here. And now I don't even get an LG this year. So I'm totally not bitter. Oh, here, one more from Tech Lovin' Mama, and we'll start wrapping up this podcast. Honestly, the main difference I can say right now from, say, the Duo and the Fold is you can swipe across the two sides. Some people care for that option and others don't care too much to have that ability. I'm not seeing any major... Oh, sorry, the comment went off the screen. I'm not seeing any major differences from LG's or Duo. I guess I'm like a lot of Apple people. I'm getting heavily into the ecosystem of Samsung, and I don't mind it, but that's just me. And then Streamy Boys is saying, I used to edit videos on my Galaxy S9 Plus. Editing video on phones is so easy these days. Techies don't even try to use their devices. They just open apps for speed tests. Simon says, Hypno, we should be grateful for Apple inventing foldables and dual screen phones in the future. We will be grateful for Apple inventing that. I guarantee you Apple's first foldable is going to be like the Z Flip. I'm putting my money down. I'm almost positive that Apple's implementation will not cut into the iPad. They aren't going to look to disrupt iPad sales. They won't have to mix iOS and iPad OS. Their first foldable is just going to be an iPhone that closes like a clamshell. And that way they can keep their proper separation. Yeah. So it's funny. And again, when I saw people like, you know, the LG implementation of dual display was really gesture rich. But you would see people in reviews like constantly fiddling with all of these little menus and options and settings. And you're like, no, you just swipe up and you swipe over and you can drag and you can do this and you can do that and double tap to turn the screen on and off. It's really easy. You don't have to do any of that. And it really highlighted for me how little effort goes into really reviewing other products. Look at how many things reviewers get wrong on Sony's. Oh, you can't focus in the camera app. When you're shooting video in the pro video mode, you totally can tap and focus. It's like a major feature of the autofocus on that Sony camera. Oh, but you can't hook up mics with the headphone jack, so what's the point of having a headphone jack? And you're like, I understand that you haven't used headphone jacks for so long that you've forgotten how they work, but cabled headphone jacks absolutely do send an audio signal to the camera app. Like, this isn't that hard to get right. You just have to do your homework. You just have to use it for more than just shooting the B-roll. And we've seen that taken to almost absurd and laughable levels. You know, the people who got so many things wrong on LGs, who continue to get things wrong on Xperias, who will dig through every nook and cranny to show you every part of the UI on a Samsung, and then we'll praise Apple for being sort of the most mainstream or the it just works option. And that's the kind of thing like I really hope more of us can get away from. So let's go ahead and wrap this up. I went long again. This is a 2-hour and 20-minute podcast. But folks, thank you so much for jumping in. Big thanks to Gary the Fireman and Longenman for some gifting some subs. Greatly appreciated. I really thank you all for not only contributing and supporting the production on this channel, but I also know this is like the core group of people that are out on the subreddit, that you're checking out reddit.com/r/glowing rectangles, and that you're just joining conversations. Even when I'm being an insufferable tech crank, that we at least get to have a little fun kind of mixing this stuff up. And thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. And this is exactly the kind of community I want to foster. I can start my week off with some kind of tech conversation and tech sanity. So thank you so much. Thank you, everybody participating, for showing up, supporting, and also for those of you supporting all of the other content creators that deserve that extra attention. Tech Love Mama just subscribed. Hey, welcome. I love it. Thank you. And well, I am Michael. I'll happily own that. You know, we are the legion of cranks. So, folks, I want you to have an amazing week with your technology. I want you to do awesome with your tech. I want you to be awesome with your tech. I want to see everybody back here next week for another episode of the Monday Morning Tech Chat Show on the SGGQA podcast channel. Be safe. It's still real gross and kind of crazy out there. And more than anything else, I'm just glad to know that of the people here, I'm pretty confident that you're also going to be those good neighbors. So look out for yourselves, take care of yourselves, and I'm happy to see all of you taking care of others. I'll catch you back here next week. I love you all. Be well.